Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and on the 5th of September 2015 was the time when I uploaded my very first Booktube video. So this year is in fact my 10th anniversary on Booktube. Can't believe it's been that long. I feel like, you know, I've been here since the OG booktubers or whatever. I've seen a lot. I haven't been very consistent in uploading over the past 10 years. Booktube has always been more of a hobby for me, something that I love doing on the side. And so, you know, there's been ups and downs with my channel as there has been with my reading. However, I still wanted to kind of celebrate this anniversary a little bit, and I decided that the way that I want to do this is I went through all of my yearly wrap-up best of videos, and I'm gonna see which books I gave the title of favorite books of the year, how many of these books still hold up, and I will choose one book from each year that I will talk about a bit more, and which is like the book of the year for me still, as in this is a book that I still regularly or semi-regularly talk about. So yeah, let's get into it. I have read a lot throughout the years, starting in 2015, which that year I read a total of 68 books, by the way. Also, it's really funny because, like, I don't know why, I didn't think the way that I'm talking changed that much, but when I went back and watched my very first videos, I'm not saying that I don't have an accent now. I'm aware. I have an Austrian accent. It is what it is. But wow, I used to have like a really strong accent. Anyway, stronger than it is now, at least to my ears. Anyway, that is not an invite, by the way, to go back and watch those videos. Please ignore the videos. They're terrible. But yeah, 2015, I read 68 books. 18 of those were between September and December. And my best books that year were kind of surprising to me because like some of these books, it feels like I read so long ago, which, yeah, 2015 is like 10 years ago, but it feels like I read them even longer ago. And so it surprised me that some of these books I only read in 2015. Anyway, my best books of that year were Wise Man's Fear, The Gospel of Loki, Dance with Dragons. I only read like the last 2 books in A Song of Ice and Fire in 2015. Crazy. Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, Bridge of Dreams by Anne Bishop, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, Gretel in the Dark by, I forgot the author's name, Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. I was still in my, like, you know, Sarah J. Maas phase. Anyway, Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier, and The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And of these books, while, like, I remember loving Jekyll and Hyde, I haven't read it since then. I also remember loving Jamaica Inn, haven't reread it since then. The book that I would say I still talk about the most consistently is The Gospel of Loki by Joanne Harris. I especially mention this every time I read a new Norse mythology retelling, because this book really formed the way that I imagine Loki to be as a character and his characterization. So this book is kind of like my standard for the type of Loki that I enjoy the most. So a lot of other books kind of have to fight with this one. In that regard, for those of you who don't know, The Gospel of Loki is pretty much a retelling of Norse mythology from the very beginning to Ragnarok, but from the point of view of the god Loki, the trickster god, the trickster figure. And he's telling you as he sees the story, and he just has this very sarcastic, amusing tone. It's lighthearted, but like still at the same time emotional. So yeah, definitely still really enjoy it. I think I reread it like 2 or 3 years ago. It hasn't been that long, I think, since I reread it, and it still held up, so definitely still a favorite. Then in 2016 I read 61 books, the best of which I actually only had 4 best books that year in my video, apparently. I don't know why. But I had Lady Midnight, The Bands of Mourning, Elantris, and The Slow Regard of Silent Things. And not gonna lie, I don't have a book to talk about. Like, I would say probably the one that I would still enjoy the most now is The Slow Regard of Silent Things, because I just really love, I forgot the character's name, but I loved her as a character. But it's been a while since I reread Patrick Rothfuss. I think I reread the first book one time at least, but not the second one, and not Slow Regard of Silent Things. Obviously Bands of Mourning and Elantris. We know how I feel about Sanderson. And Lady Midnight, I mean, yeah, sure, I guess, but Lady Midnight was really the time when Shadowhunter Chronicles started going downhill for me, and it's the first book in the trilogy that I enjoy the least out of all the Shadowhunter Chronicles, so, you know, not really worth mentioning. 2017 was one of the 2 years, like at the end of 2016, my 2.5 year reading slump started. 2017 I read a total of, I think, 12 or 13 books, only 6 of which were first time reads, so about half was rereads, half were first time reads. And my favorite books of the year in my video, I had Oathbringer and the first books in the Nevernight Chronicles. Both J. Kristoff and Brandon Sanderson are authors that I just do not enjoy anymore, for different reasons. J. Kristoff I just generally don't vibe with anymore. Brandon Sanderson, we obviously know I have way more foundational problems with. There's also some things with J. Kristoff, but they're like not as much as Brandon Sanderson, so yeah, we'll skip. 2018 we can also skip. I did almost read like 30 books that year, but like 20 of those were rereading Anita Blake, so, you know, not that many new reads, and I apparently didn't even do a best of 2018 video, so, you know, we can skip that year. Then 2019 I was back. I was back to reading. I read 72 books. I think that was the year, I don't know if you just heard the honking. If you did, I'm sorry. But I remember that was the year where up until then I had never read that many books. I had never read over 70 books in a year, at least that I could remember. Since I started tracking my books, I also only started tracking my books in 2015. And so I had a lot of favorites that year. I had Circe by Madeline Miller, Spin the Dawn by, I forgot the author's name, Red, White and Royal Blue, for some reason, by Casey McQuiston. I remember I did love it when I read it. I have since unhauled it because I didn't have any attachment to it. The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. I had The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Obviously unhauled that as well. We do not fuck with Neil Gaiman in this household anymore. Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. The Queens of Inishlia by Tessa Gretchen. Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. Then we had Dark Dawn by J. Kristoff. Again, Sanderson and J. Kristoff, the same thing. And The Hand, the Eye and the Heart by, I forgot who that author is, but it was one of the first books that I read with like a non-binary trans character. It was a Mulan retelling. I really enjoyed it at the time. I have since also unhauled it because I've just read a lot more and other better queer stories, so I didn't feel the attachment to this specific one anymore. But the book that I would say I'm still talking about the most, and it's also a book that I reread last year, is The Queens of Inishlia by Tessa Gretchen. It seems like, so far at least, retellings have stuck with me the most. This is another retelling. It's not a myth retelling, it is instead a Shakespeare retelling of King Lear, and you follow the three daughters of King Lear. For those of you who don't know the story, King Lear is the story of a king slowly going mad, and he needs, before he dies, he needs to say who of his daughters is going to become his heir, and so he tells them the daughter will be my heir who can prove to me that she loves me the most, and the one daughter who actually does love him refuses to take part in this game because she says, you know, I'm not gonna do this bullshit, but because the king is mad, he exiles her. And so this story is a very slow burn story that's just intensely character focused on the three different sisters, and just very much a character exploration of these three sisters and their different problems that they have. And it's a tragedy. It's beautiful. I love it. It's still to this day my favorite of Tessa Gretton's books that I have read. And I've read like 5 or 6 of hers so far. 2020, I doubled the books that I was reading that year. I read a total of 140 books. I'm gonna try at the end of this video to kind of just somewhat like roughly estimate by these numbers how many books I read in total over the last 10 years, or during my time on Booktube. And 2020, now we're getting into kind of the era of books where my reading tastes very much are already similar to what I am reading now. 2015, 2016, it was obviously very different. And so I had a harder and harder time choosing like one specific book. But in 2020, I read On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, or like my favorite books were Orpheia by Joanne Harris, The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. We had the Band series by Nicholas Ames, Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia, then also The Shadowed Sun by N.K. Jemisin, The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, who has now also had some controversies concerning contents of her most recently published, or not published, translated book. So yeah, look into that before you go and take any recommendations from this video. The Song of Achilles I finally read. I read Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I read The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue and loved it. Actually, I reread it, I think, pretty much in the same year still, and still loved it. And then Wunschloses Unglück by Peter Handke, which is an Austrian author. And the book, like, I found that of these books, there are some that I talk about more. Like, I talk pretty regularly about The Band, for example, at least the first book, Kings of the Wild. But I think the book that I want to reread the most, and that I think overall stayed with me the most, was Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Which is funny. This was my first of her books that I read. It's mythology inspired. It follows Cassiopeia, who opens a box, and through opening that box accidentally goes in a contract with the god of death, who has been, like, his throne has been stolen, and she is now in a contract to help him regain his throne. And it's like, it was the first book that I read by Silvia Moreno Garcia. It was for a long time the only book that I really loved by her. Now I've also read The Beautiful Ones and really enjoyed it. However, this is still my favorite by her. I really need to reread it, especially because it has one of my favorite tropes, which is Death and the Maiden. And I really love how Death, especially at the beginning, or like the god of death, is this very eldritch being and very inhuman, but through his close connection with Cassiopeia becomes more and more human throughout the story. It's just, it's a trope that when it's well written, which rarely happens, like really rarely happens. The only other time where I enjoyed it like that I can think of is the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. But when it's done well, it's just, it's so gorgeous. And I need to start talking about this book more again. I don't know why I stopped talking and raving about it, because also it hasn't been that long since I read it, so I feel like it's still, it's not one of those books where I need to be like, I don't know how much I enjoy it still. But yeah, maybe I'll take this chance to reread. So 2021 was the year of all the years that I've been alive that I've read the most books. It's been a year where I decided that there's a certain number of books that I shouldn't get beyond, because I just start to not remember what books I read. However, it is also one of the years where I still have kept the most favorites so far. And so 2021 I read 203 books, which is crazy. And my favorites that year were Wait, White Chrysanthemum, Firekeeper's Daughter. Wait was by Jeanette Winterson, White Chrysanthemum, I forgot the author's name. Firekeeper's Daughter, by the way, I'm looking down because I have the notes here. Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Booley. Dark Apprentice by Val Neal, that was the author. Honeycomb, also by Joanne Harris. Identity by Mithal Sanyu, I think that was the author's name. Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Sangue and Demones by Anna Zabini. The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nhi Vo. So that was when my Nhi Vo love started. Sword of Kaigen by Emma Wang, and Mask of Mirrors. And obviously, like, all of these, almost all of these are solid choices. Most of them I still talk about regularly. However, I had to go with Mask of Mirrors for my choice for that year, obviously, because Mask of Mirrors is my favorite series. It just, you know, it pushed the series that was my favorite before that point for like over 10 years off its pedestal. It's my favorite series of all time. I love it. I adore it. It's perfect. It's a high fantasy series. It's a quite political fantasy series. I'm not sure I would 100% put it into like political fantasy, because it's not like the politics are always at the center of the story. However, it is quite politics heavy, and it's set in Nadezhda, which is this city that has, you know, very different cultures within it and very different groups of people. And so you follow Ren, who comes back to the city which she was born in, and she comes back to pull off one last con. She wants to ingrain herself into one of the noble families and hopefully never have to worry about money ever again. However, shit starts happening and shit becomes troublesome. There's a lovable kind of like morally gray crime boss where we don't know if we can trust him or not. There's a masked rogue, vigilante type character. It's just, there's so many things about the series that I absolutely love and adore, and so yeah, it was a no-brainer. That was my pick for that year. 2022, we have 74 books read, so we went down from 200 again, and we have Jade War, The Labyrinth of Drakes by Marie Brennan, Jade War by Fonda Lee, The Discord of Gods by Jen Lyons, which surprised me that not Discord of Gods, but that Ruin of Kings wasn't on my list for 2021. However, I believe that in 2021 I made a separate video for my favorite series because I had so many new favorite books that I didn't really know what to put where. Because also, if you noticed, then on my best books list, it's like, it's only standalones, aside from Mask of Mirrors, because again, I loved it so much that it needed to be put on the list twice. and I didn't go through my favorite series list, so that's why you probably didn't see any Gen Lines in 2021. Anyway, Discord of Gods, which is the 5th book, Galatea by Madeline Miller, Homegoing by Yak Yassi, Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed, Babel by R.F. Kuang, Siren Queen by Nevo, and then The Liar's Knot by M.A. Carrick. And I decided to cheat so I can talk about The Ruin of Kings in this video also. Because, not gonna lie, while Mask of Mirrors is my favorite series of all time, I think this is my most recommended series of all time. I am pushing this on everyone. I recently got the first book, like The Ruin of Kings, as a birthday present for another friend also. I love it. This one follows Kieran, who is the lost son of a noble house. However, he might also be in the center of a weird prophecy about the end of the world and the apocalypse. And so he feels quite in over his head. The story is told, like the first book especially, but all the other ones as well, usually told in 2 timelines. Within this first book, both timelines follow Kieran. One is written from his perspective in first-person POV. He tells his story from like his late teens to his early 20s and what happened, and then the other story tells us from like his childhood to the point where Kieran starts telling the story, but it's in third-person perspective, still somewhat from his POV. However, it's told by like a different person to Kieran. It's confusing. You get it once you read the prologue to the story, but I love it. It's gorgeous. Everyone is a disaster, everyone is chaotic, everyone is queer. It's beautiful. Continuing on, we are at 2022. Once again, this series is on there twice. Once is a reread of the first 2 books, and then once for Labyrinth's Heart, the third book, which came out in 2023. I told you it's my favorite series. Anyway, then She Who Became the Sun was also a favorite reread in 2023. I had first reread it in 2021, didn't enjoy it that much, really loved it in 2023. Forever Sea by Joshua Philip Johnson. I have Iron Widow by Shidan Che Zhao. We have Warrior Girl on Earth by Angeline Boulley. Also, I don't know if I mentioned it yet. I read 79 books in 2023. Then Love in Color by, I forgot the author's name, but that's a short story collection. Mammoths at the Gate by Nevo. Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. Heart of the Sun Warrior by Su Lin Tan. And then also Lies of the Achungo. And Lies of the Achungo is the book that I definitely had to mention. This was the book that made me actually fully believe that I do enjoy novellas quite a bit. That made me rethink my stance on novellas, which has been a lot of the times that they are too short for me to fully enjoy them because they can't really go that much in depth with stories. However, this one I adored, I loved, it was beautiful. It was just within 80 pages, there was more there in terms of themes, story, character building, whatever, than a lot of books have at 500 pages. It's beautiful. It's the first book in the Forever Sea trilogy, which was just concluded this year. Still my favorite book in the series. Absolutely love it. I don't want to tell you too much about it because it's, you know, it's just a novella. It's 80 pages or like 100 pages. Somewhere in that range. But each of the books is about a city, and within the city there's always a specific problem that heroes are sent out to solve, and it's always about one of the heroes sent out to solve the problem, and discovering that not everything is as they have always believed. And it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, I love it. And now we have arrived at 2024. I did not like look at 2025 yet and what I've read so far and what my favorite books are so far, so we'll leave out 2025, but 2024 we have The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia, Coal Gets in Your Veins by Kat Rector, the Shepherd King duology, specifically as a duology, not really either of the books on their own, but as a duology by Rachel Gillick, Minor Detail by Adanya Shipley, Speaking Bones by Ken Liu, Don't Let the Forest In by CJ Drews, I think the author is called, Blood Over Bright Haven by ML Wang, The City in Glass by Nivo, and then Angels Before Man by Rafael Nicolas. And I had to cheat for that one because I just had to talk about both of these books. These books are just two of my favorite standalones. I think The City in Glass is so far my favorite Nivo standalone. I absolutely love and adore it. It's about this demon that over centuries has built the city, but one day angels come to raise it down, and in her anger the demon spits at one of the angels, and a part of her lodges itself into the angel, who then gets cast out by his fellow angels, comes back, and over a few more centuries the demon and the angel kind of built this very uneasy truce between them, rebuilding the city. And it's just beautifully written, it's gorgeous, it's Nivo at her best. Like, if you've only ever read Nivo's Singing Hills series, which is her novella series, yes, while I love that, the standalone books is really where Nivo's writing shines. I love it, I adore it, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's just everything. And yeah, I love it. It's beautiful. I don't know what else to say. And then Blood Over Bright Haven by ML Wang. I reread this year. I loved it even more on reread. This is set in the city that is both very racist and very sexist, and we follow Skiona, who is the first female high mage, and she believes that now that she has come through the exam to make it to high mage, all her problems will be over. However, they are not, because she has to realize that as a woman she still has to contend with the sexism of her colleagues as she is researching, and the research assistant that is put on her side is one of the migrants to the city who are treated abhorrently. And through building a relationship to him and the two of them kind of coming together, they discover some... I don't want to spoil too much, but they discover some things about the magic system as well as the foundations on which the city was built that don't come as a surprise to Tomil. However, Skiona has to contend with a lot of stuff about her heritage. And it's just a really interesting look at like modes of knowledge or systems of knowledge on colonialism, on sexism, and how the two of them often intersect. And it's also really interesting because it follows a character who very much is not the one in the ultimate oppressed position, which in this case is very much a choice. So like, yes, Skiona is the main character of the story, however the protagonist of the story is Tomil, and it's written so well. I love it. And yeah, with all of that, that was kind of me just going through the last 10 years on Booktube. I can't believe it's been that long, which by the way, I had a very funny thing because like in one of the years, I believe it was like in my best of 2017, I was just like, I can't even say that much about what my favorite books were, but I'll be back to more regularly uploading in 2018, and it'll not be my like 2 videos a week schedule, which I can't believe that I used to have that once upon a time, but I'll try to upload at least 1 video a week, which I counted afterwards. I uploaded a hot 10 videos in 2018, so yeah. Anyway, With all of that said, tell me in the comments down below, since when have you been with me? Like, if you can't remember the year, you know, is there any specific video that you connect me with? Are any of the picks that I had surprising to you? Like, what is the book that you connect me with the most over the last 10 years? And yeah, with all of that said, if you're new to my channel, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you liked the video and subscribe also. All the links to my social media as well as to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where I read one adult fantasy book written by a woman or genderqueer person per month, will be left linked down below, so go and check those out. Also, this week we'll have, like, Scylla, Steph and me will have our live show for The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang, which is our current read, or what we most recently read in the Quarterly Crit Club. So yeah, that will also be linked down below. Not the live show, maybe, probably, not yet, but the Discord. And yeah, with all of that said, I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!